Hi everybody, Kaiwaza with you, and welcome back to my cavalcade of Hawaiian records. Today, a special edition. We are looking at wrapping up the letter F, and we are looking at a particular label. I just really wanted to do one video. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each record, but I just wanted to gather together and show you everything I have on the label 49th State Hawaii, because it's kind of a special label, both personally to me, for nostalgic and sentimental reasons, and for collectors. It's considered a very collectible label. You find 49th State Hawaii records these days, and they can go for like $50 or $60. They're quite expensive sometimes. Quickly, before I show you the records, just a little bit about the company quickly. It only had a 10-year production run from 1948 to 1958. And as you know, and it was run by a Honolulu businessman, George Ching, who actually left Hawaii after 1958 when he folded 49th State Hawaii Records. But they had an amazing amount of recordings released during that time, and that were for sale long after the company folded. When I moved here in Hawaii in 1981, I used to go to the House of Music at Ala Moana Center, and they had an entire wall of 49th State 45s and a huge racks where you could go through and look by title for individual songs. They were really big for the hula market, also for visitors just looking for particular songs, so they were still around. This record company, you should know, was non-union, and most of the recordings were done by artists who were not particularly well rehearsed, and most of the recordings were done either in George Ching's living room or in the living rooms of the artists themselves, and sometimes they were not even paid. So these are really what you could call kind of garage recordings by any other name. Some of these artists would go on to become very famous. Genoa Keawe in particular had many recordings with 49th State, but she ended up with her own recording label and became legendary. These are her early recordings, and they're quite valuable in that respect. So let me just show you everything I have from 49th State Records. Now here are some of the 45s. Notice the amazing label. We just love the label, one of the two labels three labels that 49th State used, and also the little sleeve advertising some of their LP releases. I have started recently collecting the 45s because I don't really collect 45s, I just collect LPs, but I had gotten everything on the 49th State label in LP, and that's out there, and there's so much that was never put into an LP that was on 45, so I've started getting 45s where I can cheaply, and I have quite a few, but I'm not going to go through all those. But anyway, that's their 49th State 45s. And of course you're wondering, probably, maybe if you're astute, you're like, Hawaii is the 50th state, dude. Why is this 49th state? The 49th state is Alaska. Well, history kind of played a joke on Mr. Ching, because everybody in Hawaii thought Hawaii would be the 50th state. And statehood came in 1959, the year after this record label closed, actually. And it was a shock that it was the 50th state, because Alaska sneaked in, unexpected by anybody, sneaked in as the 49th state just ahead of Hawaii, and Hawaii ended up being the 50th. So that's why we have this strange 49th state label. So most of their albums, most of their vinyl albums are compilations, because 45s are really their main, I think, bread and butter, and they would sort of just throw together 45s in various combinations as compilation albums. But they did record a few albums by an individual artist, and these are what we'll look at first. This is Among My Souvenirs by Genoa Keawe, a famous entertainer who became even more famous years later and would have her own record label and be just the grand madam, really, of Hawaiian music. Strum Your Ukulele. This one's by Johnny Almeida. Don't you love this cover? I was very taken by 49th State Records. My grandfather had some of them. when I was a little kid, and I just thought they were so colorful and beautiful. The pictures were, and I loved the label. This is a little different label from the 45. There were two of these Hula Girl labels that they used. Two different ones. Songs to Remember Hanamaui by John P. Lonnie Watkins and his Heavenly Hawaiians. This is Daphne Walker with Bill Wolfgram and his Islanders, Maoriland and South Pacific. Love this picture because something's wrong with it. These are Tahiti, not New Zealand, which is Maoriland, but oh well. Then there's a series of albums here, instrumentals. There are no artists credited. However, I have seen 45s of some of these songs, and they credit it as the 49th State Hawaiians. It is an orchestra. It's a small dance orchestra, like with the clarinet and saxophone and steel guitar and vibes. And that's what all of these records right here are, the instrumental ones by the 49th State Hawaiians Dance Band. Carefree Days in Blue Hawaii. You have to love, I just love the saturated, artwork. A lot of these records were, a lot of these pictures were postcards that you see on their albums. And then this is kind of the typical format that most of their records took. They would just take 45s from various artists, and then usually one side is 45s, vocals, and one side is instrumentals. Mostly Benjamin Rogers on steel guitar and the Harmony Isles group with a really nice, very iconic sounding steel guitar with a very long vibe intro, very much the sound of 1950s Hawaii. This is actually my grandfather's album for real. Like, I need to replace it because it's very old, or get a better one, better shape. This one, like, it doesn't even list artists. I think a lot of these albums were actually sold. The 45s were marketed really to the hula market. Inside they list the artists, but like if you're just buying the record, you wouldn't even know. I think a lot of the LPs were sold in some of the record shops in Waikiki and places to visitors where it didn't really matter so much who the performers were. They weren't going to know them who they were really anyway, and they just wanted like albums of Hawaiian music to take home with them. This particular record, I have to tell you, like I said, these albums are very expensive. I get them when I find them cheaply. This one I actually got at a record collector's show in Oregon many, many years ago for 50 cents. He had a whole bunch of them. It was in the plastic, never opened, for 50 cents. And I near about had a heart attack when I came across those. And I didn't say anything. I'm like, oh, these are 50 cents? How lovely. You'll notice on some of them, say stereophonic. It's absolutely a lie. They didn't record anything in stereo. What they did was just to take some of these selections and do, I believe they were calling it duophonic, where it's just a great picture, right? Where it's just maybe like a slight delay between the two speakers, or the two channels actually have the same sound. There's just a slight delay, so it gives it a little bit of reverb, and they could, I guess, technically call it stereo, but it's not stereo. None of this is. Aren't the covers beautiful? I mean, they're just very iconic. I like them a lot. Sometimes on some of these you'll notice they have Genoa Keawe, her picture here, Genoa Keawe in Hawaiian. Some of the albums don't even have Genoa Keawe on it that have her picture on it. Go figure. But there's a lot of material on 45 that never made it onto any of these albums, because these albums were sort of, I don't want to say an afterthought, but they're not concept albums. Like they had so much material in 45, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 45s, and they would just put them together. Now this is worth mentioning, this cover here. I mean, how did this wardrobe malfunction ever get by in the 1950s? I mean, my goodness, there's like actual nipple there. And this is the only 49th State Hawaii record where I've seen the same album released with two titles. It's the same album, and I don't know the story, why they changed the name on it. Enchanting Hawaiian Holiday. Now some of these I'm showing you here are all instrumental words, primarily Benjamin Rogers on the Hawaiian steel guitar, and then there'll be a few songs by a nameless slack key artist or a nameless ukulele player. This is a great one. I love this because it's medleys. So you get these long vibe intros between each song. Very, very dreamy. Famous picture from the cocoa palms. Then they did a couple of Tahitian albums by Toadies Tahitians, because these guys were performing in Hawaii. So I distinctly remember as a kid in Woolworth seeing this record and my parents not buying it for me, and I was really upset. But I got it eventually. Then they did a few albums that were Japanese songs. I don't have them. Filipino and Vietnam orchestras. I do have this one, Singapore, souvenir songs from Malaya. It's just instrumentals with a very old-timey Singaporean band. And then finally they did a bunch of these. I don't know how many. This is volume 18. These again are like they're just compilations, collections of stuff that was released on 45s. I have no idea how many of these were done. No idea. But I get them when I find them. And that one is amazingly beautiful, and I'd love to find some more like these. But I don't pick them up unless I get them really cheap someplace, which you don't see very often, and they have songs I don't already have, which is usually not the case. So anyway, that's a look at 49th State. Quickly, let's hear a few needle drops from some of these records.
I'll see you in Hawaii, on the sunny shores of Waikiki. Let the trade winds blow your blues away. We'll have a tropic holiday. We'll learn to dance the hula to an ukulele melody.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that journey into 49th State Hawaii Records, and maybe can understand a little bit of the attraction I have and others have for the label. Now, we're done with the letter F, so it's time for me, as traditional, to take the book that I'm reading and draw the letter of the next letter of the alphabet that we will go to. I'm reading Strangers in Paradise, The Idea of the Pacific and Western Thought by Richard Lansdowne. Haven't gotten too far, so I don't know what to tell you about it, but we'll see. What letter do we go to next? Letter I. Okay, that won't take too long. I don't think I have an awful lot, but letter I is next.